It feels as if I have fallen into a cactus and my heart has been punctured a million times over by tiny pins. It stings at first, but now it feels as if they've left me numb. Not even slightly painful, just numb. I'm not bleeding, but I know after I slowly start to pull these foreign objects out, one by one, the blood will come gushing out. This week has been an exceptionally challenging one and initiated a different kind of video. In this regard, I feel obligated to respect someone else's privacy, which is why I will not go into further detail about what has happened. Just that heartbreak feels like nothing in the world matters anymore. Our brain receives far more sensory input than it can ever process. We are bombarded by stimulus, sounds, sight, countless different shapes, colors, textures, as well as motion, touch, taste, and even smell. It's like a DOS attack, and while our mind acts as a floodgate, preventing sensory overwhelm, this system sometimes fails. We get oversaturated by stimulus, by emotions, resulting in a denial of service. I rewatched some of my own videos, how to handle emotions, because even after creating all these videos that are supposed to help others, and to a certain degree myself, I struggled to put theory into practice. I just couldn't see how it is possible not to suffer. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional sounded great in my mind, and yet I was unable to execute it. So I tried something else, sitting with the emotions I didn't want to feel. At this point, I was wondering how it is physically possible to cry days on end, but it got better, surprisingly. I had to remind myself that none of us chose to be in the situation we currently find ourselves. But we can alter the mindset that we take into the coming weeks and months. Because when nothing seems to matter, mindset matters. I'm frequently reminded that our thoughts and actions may be the only thing we have any control over. As one of my favorite philosophers, Epictetus, put it, some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, property, reputation, commands, and in one word, whatever are not our actions. Forget everything else. Focus on your thoughts and your actions. After all, Earth is big, really big, but space is even bigger. Our human mind cannot grasp the vastness of the universe, and that isn't the only troubling concept we have. Time is even more complex. From the moment we are born, we prepare for our own death. Our body dies with each day, and in the end we might just be dead forever. Although it may sound scary, compared to the 13.8 billion years of our universe's existence and the trillions of years to come, our lives are no more than a second. Close your eyes and count to 1. This is what forever feels like. But all these numbers mean nothing. Our brains cannot comprehend these concepts. We all have it, this inner voice continually chattering away. It's forever analyzing, judging, and comparing. It's no stranger to catastrophizing and melodrama. Being lost in a useless inner monologue is for most of us a deeply ingrained affliction. We become prisoners of our own minds. We lose touch with ourselves and our environment. Why? Because a significant portion of our energy is being channeled into that stream of mental noise blasting through our mind, like a radio someone forgot to turn off. Many of us aren't even aware of this mental noise because it's such an intrinsic part of our experience. The problem is this mental commentary is often blinkered and dysfunctional. It has a tendency to think the worst, driven by fear and lack, alternating between inadequacy and superiority. It fuels our sense of separateness and incompleteness with a universe we barely understand. Alan Watts, who has soothed many a case of existential dread with his response to the idea that we are somehow separate from the universe, either hovering above it or crushed beneath it. Humans are not, as Watts colorfully wrote, isolated egos inside bags of skin. Instead, we are as much the universe as a neutron star, or a black hole, or a nebula. Even better, actually, we are its thinking and feeling part, the sensory organs of the universe. We learned that the sparkling circles in the sky that exist somewhere far away in space and time are not light bulbs switched on especially for us. They simply are. We learned that the sun will rise and the moon will take over at the end of each day. This place we call home, a rock floating in space covered with over 70% water, wasn't made for us. We learned that we are all made up of dead things, and yet we are alive, conscious beings. And at some point, without forcing ourselves to think about it, we realize that things will continue to move even without us. That, in the grand scheme of things, a person, or all humans for that matter, are utterly insignificant. We became conscious in this universe only to understand that this story is not about us. All our intentions, no matter how good and honorable they may be, are insignificant for the universe to continue to exist. In other words, life is meaningless. Life just happens by its own accord without reason. You might be tempted to say the reason a river runs is because it rains, but then you ask why it rains, and why there are clouds, and why there is evaporation or oceans, to eventually end up back at your river. In other words, nature has no need for the human point of view. From a cosmic perspective, there's no point in what we are doing here. None. Long before humans existed and held theories about the universe, nature was doing its thing, and it still does today. And as you'd expect, nature will survive and endure past the human race regardless of all the theories and rationalizations we hold about it. I know, that's a pretty grim, pessimistic way of looking at things. To be more precise, a nihilistic way of looking at things. But nihilism isn't pessimism. I quote, "If optimism is hopefulness, then pessimism is hopelessness." To be a pessimist is to say, what's the point? For example, if a pessimist fell in a well and someone offered to rescue him, he's likely to respond, why bother? In the well, out of the well, we're all going to die anyway. In other words, pessimism is dark and depressing, but it's not nihilism. End quote, Nolan Gertz. Amidst the darkness and hopelessness that emerge from the perception that nothing matters, there's a glance of brightness. To encounter this existential crisis, I recommend a remedy: optimistic nihilism, a philosophy that possesses ultimate freedom in the midst of and solely enabled by the utter meaningless of existence. Optimistic nihilism is the realization that the lack of meaning in the world and the universe as a whole is liberating and enlarges our free will. Optimistic nihilism deals with the existential concept of the absurd. Human beings naturally seek meaning, but we live in a world with no innate meaning. We are tiny creatures that live only briefly compared to the universe too epically large and old for our brains to comprehend. The friction between incongruous concepts like these creates a dilemma: the absurd. To resolve the absurd, optimistic nihilism advises us to accept it and embrace the feeling of surrender. The Stoic philosophy teaches us that there are many things in life we cannot control, and the optimistic nihilist is grateful for this. It narrows down what we have to worry about. It also reminds us that there is always a reason to keep going. We only have to find one for ourselves. After reading enough discourse on philosophy forums to make my eyes burn, I've learned that many philosophers look down on the specific term optimistic nihilism. Many view this philosophy as a mixture of the three philosophies nihilism, absurdism, and existentialism, with a badly tacked on addition of morality. However, many people find comfort in being alive and relief in their everyday lives through optimistic nihilism. Isn't that valuable in and of itself? We have the freedom to choose. Nihilism, Buddhism, Taoism, Stoicism, or any other school of thought that gets us through our days. We can also choose to combine them all if that's what works. Attitude is a choice. Happiness is a choice. Optimism is a choice. Kindness is a choice. Giving is a choice. Respect is a choice. Whatever choice you make, makes you. Choose wisely. Roy T. Bennett. In the end, what stays is the ultimate question. How is it possible that there's any such thing as true freedom? The idea that free will is an illusion has haunted philosophical thought for at least a couple thousand years. But in the existentialist view, the real fear is not that we may have too little freedom, but that we may have too much. That we may have the ultimate freedom, that of conscious beings who appeared in the universe unbidden and by chance, and who can only determine for ourselves what form and direction their being might take. This was the early view of Jean-Paul Sartre. We are left alone without excuse, he famously wrote in his 1946 essay, Existentialism is a Humanism. This is what I mean when I say that man is condemned to be free. Freedom is a burden, Each of us alone bears the full weight of responsibility for our own lives and choices. As Sartre wrote, we not only get to determine our purpose, we have to do so, or we cannot be said to exist at all. Just because we're all doomed does not mean we can't have a good time, right? You are already the achievement called life. You are alive, and there's nothing else to fundamentally do or know other than you only get one shot at life. You are free to define your values and principles, choose what matters and what doesn't, set goals, experience things, forge memories, and overall live your life to the fullest. But keep in mind, even though life is meaningless, it's not lawless, at least not for you and me. There are certain social boundaries that must be obeyed, regardless of the philosophy we profess. If you found value and enjoyed watching, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos.